Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of This Is Us at the Resurrection Center, the place where we empower every person to love, to connect, and to serve. Thank you so much for joining us every single week. I've got another amazing guest for you tonight. You're going to be surprised, but more importantly, you're going to be blessed. But before I do that, I need you to do me the big favor. I need you to subscribe, hit that bell, and share your comments. The best thing you can do for us, if we're a blessing to you in any way, shape, or form, if you share this content with your friends and your family members, today is going to be off the charts, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to be blessed. I know the prophetic anointing is in the room. You're going to be challenged, and you're going to hear an incredible story from these incredible people. And if you're from RC, they are definitely no strangers to you. But to you that's watching in different parts of the world today, like Africa, UK, and parts of America, we are going to be blessed. And would you welcome to This Is Us, two incredible gifts to us here at the Resurrection Center and to First Lady and I personally, two people in the person of Pastor Terry Wilson and Prophetess Jennifer Wilson. Woo!
Yeah.
Listen, guys, thank you so much for being here.
Great
We
to have.
love you guys and
Great to-
appreciate you guys
Great to be.
so much. The things that you guys do here at RC and with your experience and wisdom is truly, truly incredible. I am so encouraged to see and to experience the high quality gifts that God has placed here at RC and as elders here. It's really incredible. Now, one of the things I love to do is to get some background of our members, because not everybody that's watching will know you guys. So I asked our guests to give us a short story about where you're from, if you're from Canada, where you were born, things like that. So we'll let the ladies go first.
Absolutely.
So Jennifer Wilson, Prophetess, tell us about you.
Sure. Well, born and raised on the east coast of Canada from New Brunswick. And
New Brunswick.
yes. Not so far from Newfoundland.
Yeah.
Moved here kind of on a whim when we met, pre any church experience, pre any relationship with Christ.
That's amazing.
Yeah. that
So did
was
you guys meet in New Brunswick?
in New Brunswick in 1989 in my hometown.
Okay.
And literally, we knew each other for a couple of months, put everything we owned in a U-Haul and headed for...
Just a couple months? You guys just met a couple months?
Like 6 months.
You're moving to Montreal with a
Yeah.
guy that you don't really know?
Yeah. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that for everybody, but
That's
this
crazy.
is us. That's our story.
Wow. Okay, so you guys moved to
Yeah.
Montreal.
So that was in 1989, and really it was just, big city, bright lights, get somewhere out of small town, and see what that held for us. And little did we know what that held for us.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Huh?
yeah. And it wasn't too long after that we found jobs and started it's just figuring out where we wanted to live in the city. And
Were you bilingual?
No, I
Terry,
still wouldn't qualify myself as bilingual.
You weren't French?
No.
No.
So why Montreal though, guys? Like, how in the world was there something driving you behind this other than we know now, like, God is in control of everything. But like, how did you choose Montreal?
I think it's just a matter of big city, bright lights.
Yeah.
Kind of allurement. Yeah.
And not Toronto, not Vancouver?
Nope. Well, one of the attracting factors was my sister was already here.
Okay,
We had a
that
place to
makes
stay.
sense. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
We had a
first
point of
got
So
there.
you weren't homeless right away?
No.
No. Not right away.
Not
that
right
came
away.
later. No, it didn't. We're good.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, kind of got our footings, found jobs, and through just this incredible chain of events, found myself asking somebody one night, do you know of an English-speaking Anglican church in the city that has a lot of young people and really good music?
That's crazy.
And like, I was not in any frame of mind to be.
I wonder how did you know how to ask for that?
I didn't. It was literally like I opened my mouth in a conversation and the words came out, and I almost wanted to look behind me to say, like, who said that? Because it was so
Wow,
bizarre.
That's
and,
amazing.
Yeah. And I was brought up nominally Christian in the Anglican Church, meaning, you know,
Okay.
you go on Easter and Christmas and you get confirmed.
That is so funny.
And
To see where you are today
Yeah.
and think about Jennifer like that, it doesn't even compute.
No, not at all.
Wow.
And the person that I was asking said, oh, well, as a matter of fact, I go to this Anglican English church in the downtown area that has a lot of young people and really good music. I'm actually on the worship team. I play guitar there. You should come.
Okay.
And that was the beginning of the beginning. I
So
would say.
at this point, you're not even born again? Like,
Never heard the term. Like,
No.
and if I had heard the term, it was like, you know, in popular culture, that's
Sure.
a term that people make fun of. It was
Right.
more like you would mock people if they said they were born again, right?
right.
So we decided that we would go and try it out. So I would say our weekly schedule was party Saturday night,
I love
get up
I love
hungover,
this. Oh my gosh.
and make our way to church. So for me, it was like the Anglican service, like the liturgy of the service was fairly familiar, but it was a lot freer. It was less formal and traditional
Okay.
than I was used to. And every single Sunday, I would find myself, and this will come as no shock to either of you, but just dissolved in tears. And I didn't know it at the time, but it was God pulling on my heart, and he was just opening me up, and I
Sure.
thought I was nuts and having some kind of a breakdown. So that kind of spurred me on. Sorry, I'm not giving a whole lot of
No,
growing
it's
up
good.
background. I'm
It's
giving
okay, it's
coming
okay.
to Christ background,
Yeah.
our testimony, really.
Yeah.
That spurred me on to start asking pretty serious questions. And just to backtrack, before we left my hometown, my grandmother gave me $20 and a little piece of paper with a name written on it. And the night that I asked the person about a church to go to, and they told me the name, I remembered it, and I think I'd put it in my purse. I reached in, same church.
No way.
Yeah. Because her
That's a crazy
rector's son was going to that church, and she was just kind of like, if you ever want to go to church. And every once in a while I would sing in the choir with my grandmother.
Isn't it amazing how God can just use anything,
Yeah.
anyone, anywhere?
Absolutely.
My goodness.
Absolutely.
So growing up, you grew up with mom and dad?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Were you a good girl, bad girl?
How much do I tell?
Yeah.
I was sort of like the eldest of two, kind
Okay.
of the model kid, you know, really did really well in school and all of that, and it kind of came crashing down after I graduated high school. I really had no idea what I wanted to do. Had a pretty dismal first year at university that didn't go very well. And that was pretty traumatic for me because, you know, when you kind of coast through school and you do
Right.
really well, to come to this place where you can't even get up and go to class.
Wow.
And then they send you a letter in the summertime saying, we're not inviting you back.
Wow.
Yeah, that didn't go over real well. So that was rough. And I think that was probably part of the impetus behind, I have to do something. I just have to get out of here. I have to.
So at this point, you guys are not married, but you're living
No.
together, or
We were living together.
Okay.
Yeah, which was fairly short-lived, I would say, because as soon as we started going to this church, I almost immediately joined this, it was called a Christian Beginnings class, and it was
Yeah,
really
yeah.
just like people who could go and ask questions about faith and ask questions about who is Jesus and what is this all about.
My goodness,
Right?
this is so interesting.
Yeah. So I started going, and you know, the Lord really began to show Himself to me, and I really, to circle back to the whole point of how we were living and where we were living. You know, I felt very convicted, and and again, not in a guilty way, but just like I just had a sense that what I was learning was very real, and that I was beginning a journey that I needed to stay the course on. And I remember waking up one morning and telling Terry, so some things have to change.
No way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And
So let's bring Terry into the conversation just so we can get some background. Where were you born? And
Grew up small town, farm boy,
farm boy?
East Coast, Nova Scotia. In
Really?
Dusty town called Hassett.
What a name!
Yeah.
Like acid as in... Really?
And just, it was my job to get up in the morning and prepare the house for the family and just take care of the heating and the water and the.
So are you saying like
You're
we
talking
had to
way
bring
back.
in wood, like
Yeah.
we heated our house by
Yes.
wood. Is that the way you did it too?
Yes, I had to start the fire.
Yeah.
Heat up the fire.
Yeah.
Make sure
Okay.
the water was hot in
Right.
in the drum, and we didn't have running water either.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to go and fetch the water from a well in the hole, like a hole in the ground,
Right.
and those kinds of things. So it was a humble beginning
Wow.
of growing up, and then moved to Halifax. My mother moved myself and my two sisters to Halifax, and we lived there with family members. I think there was 8 of us in a small 3-bedroom house, and it was crazy. It was chaos. And that didn't last long before all of the kids started battling each other, and then it made its way up to the parents, and it just became a very difficult time. And then we found our way through various different housing situations in the city and stuff like that. But before we left, my father had a boating accident while we were all, as a family, gathered at this picnic event, and the boat capsized with the men in it,
Wow.
and my father didn't make it.
No, Terry. Are you serious?
He didn't make
How
it.
old were you?
I was 11.
My
I was
goodness, this
11.
must have been very
And,
traumatizing.
yeah, and it was.
So you're at a picnic.
We're at a picnic. There's probably about 50 of us, 60 of us. And all the families were gathered, and we were having a great time. And like I said, the men were out on a boat in the middle of the lake, and it capsized. And the kids were, like myself, we were all in the water and playing and everything like that. And this happened, and it was traumatizing. Yes, it was tough. It was tough.
Wow.
Yeah, but we made our way, and I grew up in Halifax after that, and then, like Jen said, in 1989, I moved to New Brunswick.
So you didn't move to New Brunswick for her. You just moved and found her, or
Yes, I moved to New Brunswick and running a fresh start on things, and got a job in a restaurant because this was my choice of work.
Right.
Loved cooking, and and
I still do.
And it turned out to be very good for me because look who I met.
Right.
And
in said restaurant.
Yes,
I was working there.
Oh, you were working at the restaurant?
Yes.
Yeah, and we hit it off. It was really incredible. At the beginning, it was kind of like, just watch and study and, wait and just be patient. But I did let her know that there was some interest.
Right.
You're just setting traps. That's
Wow. So you grew up, it sounds like that you grew up probably not at a wealthy home, if I understand.
No. Really, poverty was huge.
Okay.
Poverty was huge. Substance abuse was huge. It was a very difficult childhood growing up. And yeah, so with that comes the scars and all of the different things that you need to carry on as a young adolescent. And how to manage all that stuff. But yes, as poverty really can take a toll on your mentality and your identity. So
100% for sure.
yeah.
So your story, Jen, like you grew up with both mom and dad in the home, or
grew up in a stable family environment. I wouldn't say that we were ultra wealthy, but certainly well off. Like I never wanted for anything, but we weren't spoiled. You know, we were taught the value of hard work, and so it was, I would say, a fairly normal and easy upbringing. It wasn't until I hit my later teens that everything kind of went haywire.
Okay.
And I'm the total opposite of that.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's
they say opposites attract, right?
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely.
Wow. So now you're both in Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and you come back to your story. So you had this, whatever you wanted to call
Epiphany,
it.
encounter, whatever.
Yes. So you feel like somehow I'm in this investigating more of God. You're going to church, and you're telling him, hey, some things need to change.
Yeah. And we all know what that means.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it didn't go well.
It didn't go well, right? So pick up that story, Jen. That's so interesting.
So after I said that, and I didn't want it to come across like an ultimatum, but how else would it come across,
I understand.
right? And
is he going to church with you?
Off and on.
Off and on.
Yeah.
I was nowhere near what
what
she was involved with in doing what she was doing.
Okay.
Down on the streets in Montreal and just radical and telling people about her new religion and stuff like that. You know.
Did you think you're actually losing it? Or?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, you know, I was plotting and planning, you know, what my move was going to be.
Okay.
I wasn't down for it.
Okay.
But, you know, it was a matter of convenience at that point in terms of our relationship, where we lived and those kinds of things. New city and, you know, so.
Okay, so you tell him, hey, something's got to change.
Yeah.
What happened next?
I fully expected that he would just pack up and go.
Yeah.
And he didn't. He stuck around, and things that needed to stop stopped, and I figured, you know, this has an expiry date on it.
That's too funny.
And then I guess what started happening was you started to experience a little more interest in things of faith, and there was a bit of a tug that was happening. But my concern was, you know, that I had to know that what he was experiencing was real for him, and that he wasn't just doing something to try and get in my good graces or to stick around.
Which sometimes happens.
Yeah, which easily could happen. Yeah. So I think we agreed that we would move apart for a while, which we did. He moved in with a young guy that he'd met through the church that we were going to, and I got my own little studio apartment, and it was kind of like, let's wait and see what happens. And
well, I mean, you fast forward past the point of why that all came about.
Why did it all come about? Remind me.
Because there was this event that was happening in Montreal, and you became a part of it.
Oh, right.
Because of all the involvement that you had in the church. And you were singing in this mass choir in this Billy Graham crusade.
Right.
Okay.
And what the hook was is that I was a musician, and I was an aspiring musician, and I wanted to cut records and things like that. So that was one of the things that I wanted to take advantage of here in the city, in Montreal. And when I learned that she was going to be singing in this mass choir, I just wanted to hear it. The sound. I mean, this was cool, and then just to see her being involved with this mass choir, I just wanted to get that experience. And so, I told my homies, my friends that we were working with, I'll meet you at the club after I go to this thing. I just got to go and see my girlfriend, and you know, I'll meet you after.
Did thinking back, were you in love with her?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah?
I was, and I know I recognized a good thing.
Okay.
I recognized that this was a good thing, and I was always mindful of the fact that she had made a huge sacrifice coming with me to Montreal, and just accepting me the way I was at that point.
Which is probably very broken.
It was a mess.
You were okay.
I was a train wreck.
You said that, not me. So you were a mess.
I was a train wreck, and just trying to find myself. I'm coming off of divorce as well, just a broken marriage.
So you were married before?
Yeah, I was.
Before you met
married,
Jennifer, you were married before?
At 20 years old, and just tried to have a go at it, and it just crashed and burned. We were just too young and immature, and just couldn't handle some of the things that life was throwing at us.
Wait! I don't go so fast.
Okay.
When this is what happens, because none of this is scripted. I want you to know this. You said you were too young.
Yeah.
What would you say to somebody that's watching right now that maybe how old were you?
20.
You were 20 years old. You think you know everything, right? And they're thinking about getting married.
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
Well, first of all, you think you know everything, but you don't.
I love it.
And you have to give some time for yourself to mature, especially in making decisions like this, because it's a decision that is for the rest of your life.
20 years old, but you were divorced already?
I got married, I was 20, and then the marriage crashed and burned.
Okay, must have been one year.
No, we met 4 years later.
Wow, okay,
So
okay.
It was 4 years in.
I got it.
It was 4 years in.
But 20 is very young.
Yeah, 20 is young, and we, like I said, we tried to make a go at it, but my life wasn't in order, and so if I were to ask or to speak to somebody at that age, I would really have them examine where their life is and how much order and responsibility they can manage to before they make a decision like this, because it's a huge responsibility.
Yes.
Okay, and once we got married, then we decided to have a child, and then once we had a child, it
becomes
doubled
another
the
huge responsibility.
Yeah. And we just couldn't handle the weight of the pressure of being individual within ourselves, but also having to share this life as husband and wife, and now as mother and father.
And did you ever receive any healing or counseling for all the trauma that you've been through in your life at that point?
After that, yes. And so, going back to the story, I go to this crusade, or that's what they call it, this event at the Forum, Montreal Forum, and
to see your girlfriend.
See my girlfriend singing this choir.
Yeah.
And she meets me, and then we're going to the seat, and she tells me that she's not singing. So I'll never forget that. I was so disappointed, and I was so upset. And so she decided to sit there beside me, with me.
So why wasn't she singing?
Because she decided she didn't want to sing, that she wanted to sit beside me.
Oh.
There's a little more to it than that.
Okay, can you add? Come on, tell us the other part.
Yeah, and this is a bit of a confessional, because I wouldn't say it's the only time that I've tried to play Holy Ghost.
I love it. Don't we all do that? Eh?
So, yeah, it was a bit of a tactic.
Okay.
Because if I sit next to him, then he has to pay attention to what's being said. He can't leave early. He can't ditch me. And the youth pastor from the church that we were attending off and on was sitting directly behind us. So I was like, we got him surrounded, right?
Wow.
I didn't know that.
Jennifer Wilson.
I didn't know that one. Wow.
And he had told me that in addition to the choir, that part of the reason he wanted to go was that he remembered when he was younger that his mom would watch the televised Billy Graham crusades. And there was always this song, Just As I Am, that they would sing and play.
I still love that song.
Yeah.
That's a powerful song.
Yeah, and I remember just being in the yard playing as kids, and my mom would just turn the TV blasting
for sure
when that was playing, and I would hear it out in the yard. But So I'm sitting there, and I have to sit there through this whole talk, and
Are you like totally
wanting
disengaged?
Yeah, I'm wanting to leave. I'm thinking about my friends, and all of a sudden, and I'm telling you this is literally, all of a sudden, the song starts playing.
Mm.
And
Just As I Am song?
yes, it starts playing,
Yeah.
and it's like something came over me and completely
Something did come over you.
wiped me out.
Hey.
And all I remember is hearing the invitation to come down to the front.
So wait. So are you drinking and
No.
partying at this point, or
No, I just left work.
okay?
I just
No, but
got
I
off
mean
work.
your lifestyle.
Oh yes.
Oh, yeah.
Your
Oh
lifestyle.
my.
Oh, yeah.
Oh
Oh,
my.
yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Everything I can give you a list.
No, it's okay.
I can give
Only
you
what
a
you're
list.
comfortable with.
Oh man.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're far from God. You're
Far
not a
from-
okay. All right. Good. So
Far from.
so the song starts and something comes over you
Something
and
comes over me, and I'm just overwhelmed, and literally I realize I come to my senses, and I'm down on the floor in front of this stadium, and
this is in the Forum, like
yeah,
the
this
old
is at the
Montreal Forum.
Montreal
So
Forum.
like down on
So it's a
on the
it's
ring,
a
so to speak.
Were you far up though, or like
Yeah, I was up far up in the.
So you don't remember going down?
Don't remember.
Do you remember? Like,
I remember going with him, and I remember thinking, I don't know when we get to the end of this row of seats if he's going to the exit or if he's
So he never
going to the floor.
told
Like,
you, hey.
Not really. No.
Okay, so
no.
you didn't know. Okay,
No.
wow, this is so interesting.
No.
Go ahead, you got me.
and yeah, and so I'm down there, and I literally come to my senses. I don't remember what happened from the time that I went down there till the time that I realized that my hands were up, my face was full of tears, and I just
Wow.
completely felt like I was a totally different person.
Like that.
Like that. And then when I started to become aware of the moment, and like I'm going, like, what just happened? I'm going, okay, I got to get out of here.
Mm.
This is way too much.
Yeah,
This is
that's-
like this is
Panic.
crazy.
Right.
And so I'm heading for the doors.
Are you laughing, Jen, at this point, or?
Well, I'm watching this little guy come over. He's got on like the short sleeves
Yeah.
shirt, the pocket protector, the glasses. He's about half of Terry's size,
Okay.
and he's coming over with his little track, and he's gonna talk to my husband. And I'm
I
like,
can see this now.
brother.
You good luck.
Yeah.
He's talking to me
like a
quickly.
brick wall.
Yeah, he's talking to me quickly.
And Terry's his eyes are darting. He's like,
okay,
I need to
thanks,
go.
Thanks, I'll see you later. And so I left him in the dust, and I'm heading for the door, and this guy steps right in front of me,
Okay.
and he just says, "Hey, do you work out?"
No kidding. And you're probably back
Yeah,
then. You were.
lived in the gym,
Right.
right? And I went, "Yeah, I do. Why?" He said, "Because I got a gym." Really? Yeah. And so,
No way, Terry.
and then he started this conversation about what just happened, and that he would like to be a part of me understanding
No way.
what
God
what
had
just
this
took-
guy there, so
Yes.
he wasn't a plant by Jennifer.
No,
No.
I had nothing to do with that one.
He just came out of nowhere, and this guy ended up walking me through 6 weeks of just total like confusion. That's the
My
word that I would
goodness,
use.
Terry, this is incredible.
Like years and years and years of anger and pain and suffering and issues and questions, and all came to this moment in time.
Mhm.
And this guy was right there, and he was calling me every day. He
You
got to
know,
the-
I heard from another one of our leaders one time that this is how they really became born again. They had a born again experience, but then somebody followed up with them and called them every single day.
Yeah.
And don't we stop that, eh?
Yeah.
It's very rare that you'll
Yeah.
find somebody
Yeah.
making that investment.
We're
So
not in
thank
the
God.
same world in
Right.
terms of now it's texting, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But then it was calling, and it was. Sometimes he would call, and I would say, "Jen, tell him I'm not here."
We were still living in the same apartment
Yeah.
at this time, and the phone would ring, and I wouldn't even answer. Like, I'd just pick it up and hand it to him. I'd be like,
Because
"It's
you
him."
knew?
Yeah.
But thank God for him, because he really brought me through that period of time where I
Thank you,
really
Jesus.
needed that life ring. I really needed to have that person who kept being there, kept pulling me into the boat, and to the point where I decided, okay, I'm going to go to his church, and I'm going to explore.
Was he the
all of
pastor?
his-
When you say go to his church, you mean the church he attended, or was he a pastor?
His mother was the pastor.
Oh, his mom was a pastor.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it was a small church downtown Montreal,
Okay.
about 30 people, and just, charismatic, just loved Jesus and pursuing after
That's amazing.
the heartbeat of God.
Mhm.
And I was my first my first day there. They were doing these meetings,
Mm-hmm.
they called it, and they had this guest speaker, and it was summertime. It was hot, and
No AC,
no
probably.
AC in that place. And I sat in the back. The place was packed, and the guy calls me out.
You mean the guest speaker?
Yes.
No, wait. Just back up just a little bit before
Okay.
before he called you out. I was sitting next to you, I'm sure, and I'm like really into it, and this is like all new to us. Like we
It's new
Yeah.
to you, even though you're
Yeah.
at church. This is not
yeah, because
Anglican,
this
right?
is not Anglican.
This
This
is
is like
charismatic.
full on
Wow.
charismatic, prophetic. You
Yeah.
name it. It was all happening.
Tongues and
Yeah.
all kinds
Oh,
of
yeah?
kind of
Oh, yeah.
languages.
Oh, I
That's-
got questions, man. I
What's
got
going
questions.
on with this?
Yeah, so it was freaky for me. It was freakier for you, if that's a word.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, he kind of nudged me, and it was hot. It was uncomfortable. We didn't understand what was happening. I was enthralled. He was annoyed. So he kind of looks at me and he goes, "I'm just going to go out and get some air and have a cigarette. I'll come back later on," or something like that.
Yeah.
And I just had this sense that he's not going to come back.
Mm-hmm.
He's leaving.
Right.
And sure enough, the son of the pastor
Yeah.
saw him go out the back door,
Uh-huh.
and he got about a block away, headed
He's
towards
chasing you, probably. I can see it
Yeah.
right now.
headed towards the metro, and stops him and convinces him to come back in. And it was at that point.
I'm surprised you didn't punch him or something,
Yeah.
Terry, because you were violent at
Yeah,
times, right?
I was, but something was going on, right?
Yeah.
That born again experience was legit, and there were some things that were changing in me that I didn't necessarily have control of.
And you were probably always in control of your life, so
Yeah.
you thought, right?
Yeah, so I thought.
Yeah.
But these things were shifting some things in me that I had never experienced before, becoming more internalized than externalized. You get used to people barking orders at you and telling you things to do. But then it's a completely different shift when you sense that there are things that are being spoken to you internally that you said, wait a minute, this is a good thing. But where did it come from?
Okay.
Right? It
So
didn't
you had
come-
a lot of questions.
Yeah, I had a lot of questions. And so I knew at this point that this God thing was real. But I wasn't sure how to approach it. Yes, this guy was helping me. Yes, this guy was discipling me. And this is the words that he used that I didn't fully understand. But there was a decision that I need to make in terms of, okay, how far am I going to allow this to go on? And how much more do I need or do I want, okay, from him? And it was when I came back into the meeting, and I'm sitting in the back, and I'm kind of annoyed again, And then all of a sudden, it was like he's prophesying to people. This is his words.
Mm-hmm.
I'm prophesying to people.
But you've never seen that before.
I've never
right?
seen this stuff before.
Right.
They didn't have a clue what it meant. And he looks at me and he tells me to stand up.
Okay.
And I stand up, and he starts speaking to me, and he starts telling me that the Lord is calling me to be this and to be that, to do this and to do that. And then he said, and I see you stepping into the pastorate.
Okay.
And God's calling you to be a pastor.
But you didn't even understand those words for sure, right?
No.
Pastorate.
He's using these terminologies.
Yeah.
But something connected.
That part I understand, yes.
And it was after that I really felt a hunger open up for God's word and for righteousness. It was then that I realized I need to go deeper in this, and then I made a decision to do it, to pursue after righteousness and pursue after an understanding of what this was, and to get serious about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all around that time that we had a pastor who really started to speak into our lives.
Okay.
Because we came in at the same time as these other young people.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a group of about 7 or 8 of us. And we were all learning at the same time. And the pastor would speak into our lives. We were young adults, obviously, and, separate yourselves.
Right.
Right? And allow God's purity and God's holiness to really come in and be an experience, not just something that you say.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that you experience. And so we decided to split up and move apart, and I moved in with one of the guys that we came into the church at the same time, a young guy, and I lived with him, and Jen took her own apartment, and this was a big shift, and we lived apart, and we, with the goal and the idea of let's pursue a stronger relationship and perhaps marriage, to the point where I got up the nerve and the courage to ask her for marriage, her hand in marriage. And what did you say?
I said yes, but.
Yes, but. What was the but?
The but was what I alluded to before, and that was that I needed to know that we were on the same path, and I
Okay.
needed to know for sure.
Okay.
Like it was too early for me to feel confident that, the choices that I was making. Number one, was I going to stick with it? Number two, was he going to stick with it? Because I think I knew intuitively that if one of us was going to veer off of that path, that it would be really difficult to be married.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
At what point was there a turning where you thought, okay, God, I'm going to take this risk? Because relationships, as you know, it's risky. He could be telling you one thing just for the sake of sealing the deal, so to speak. How did you know?
I think the fact that we had the time apart that we did really served to allow us to know in ourselves individually that this was real, and then that began to show up to each other. That yes, there was a commitment here to the Lord first, and that now we can talk about making a commitment to one another. And I remember very, very clearly, I was in a service one night, I don't think you were there, and there was the fellow who was ministering. He had a beautiful wife, and they had kids, and like everything looks like it's
like
just perfect.
Yeah.
And just he had a strong anointing, and he was talented, and the family was talented. And I remember saying, Lord, I want to marry a man of God. with that sort of model in my mind.
Yeah.
And I qualified it by saying, and I don't know if he is it or not, but help me to know if it's him.
That's a powerful prayer.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think a lot of times in the world that we live in today, and many young people don't ask those prayers, don't pray those prayers. But it's necessary. So what would you say to a young lady that's watching right now that maybe is living a similar story? I really love this person, but I'm not sure their commitment to the Lord, but they're ready to get married. What would you say to them? What advice would you give them?
I think I would say if you have any qualms at all about it, if there are things that maybe they're not red flags, but they're like flags that haven't quite turned green yet. It's not like it's ever going to be 100% perfect, and you know that you know that you know. Unless God speaks to you clearly, either you know through somebody else or. I'm
not sure if I've ever had God speak to me about anything so clearly that it reached 100%.
Yeah,
though.
exactly.
With our walk with the Lord, there's always an element of risk, right?
Yeah.
So I love that. So you would say to them, make sure that you're hearing from the Lord.
And submit it to people who have your best interest at heart, and listen to what they have to say, because when you're in pitter-patter love, you can kind of gloss over and look past a lot of things.
Isn't that a fact?
Yeah. So don't try and go it alone, and just really listen to anything that you feel like, I'm not sure about this. Don't rush into something. Really, I mean, you could say marriage isn't permanent, but in a sense, it is.
Yeah,
it's supposed to be,
It's supposed
right?
to be. Yes.
Yeah.
Until death do us part, not till we don't like each other anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I think a lot of people, and we probably did this, especially when you're young, you have this sense that when you meet that person, that they're going to make you happy.
Come on, talk about that.
The reality of it is, if you're looking at another person and the qualities that they're going to bring to the relationship to make you happy, and you're not focusing on yourself and saying, what am I bringing to this that is actually going to make a good spouse for that other person, and doing that work on yourself, then, the chances are you're going to be sorely disappointed. And, marriage is wonderful, and it's work. Right?
Two W's. Yeah. Wonderful and work. Yeah.
And a successful marriage is only successful if you are working on yourself.
Yeah.
True. Which is a lifetime of work.
Yeah. It's a lifetime of work, and the more I work at improving the things in my life that I know I need to improve on, the more I add value to the relationship and to the marriage, in terms of my behavior, in terms of my attitude, in terms of what I can bring to add value to her as a person, individually, and honor her as my wife, and I honor her as a woman, and not just think that she's my property, because now we're married and I can act in any way that I want and do whatever it is that I want, and those are the kinds of things that you need to work through, and you need to constantly find improvement and ways to make improvement in your life. And it's not just, and here's another thing that I've learned, is that you can't do it alone. You need other people in your life.
But that seems to be a sermon that you guys are both preaching together, together but different, or yet apart. Like, you're both saying, she mentioned about having people in your life. Now you're saying, what's up with that? What's God trying to teach us that's in this room, that's watching this right now, about having community, having other people that you can talk to?
Well, I mean, immediately, and I know you're going to jump on this, but immediately when you think of what God said in the garden in Genesis. He said, it's not good
Right.
for man to be alone, period. And so if you just take that and you recognize that loneliness or being alone or being all by ourselves is not good.
Right.
And I'll just take that at face value. And if I
Yeah.
take it at face value and I know that it's in God's heart that he wants and probably has prepared people to be in my life,
Right.
various different intervals for various different reasons,
Mm-hmm.
then I need to be on the lookout for that, and I need to be susceptible to that. I need to be open and vulnerable to that so that people can speak into my life and people can be a model of specific characteristics and behaviors that I need to improve on. And they're there in my life that I can glean from,
Right.
and that I can, tap into and say, listen, how did you do that? How did you become that? And I have people in my life like that at various different stages,
Right.
and from young to old. I have young people that are modeling certain things to me right now at my stage in my life that I want to hold on to.
Sure. Sure.
That at my age right now, I can probably convince myself that, well, they're gone now.
Right.
But that youthfulness I need in other areas.
Praise the Lord. Yes.
And so I want some young people around me that can still model that youthfulness to me, and I can glean from and just rub off on, right?
I want to go back for a moment to when you really started to submit your life to the Lord. And I have a question that I would love for you to speak to, because probably there's somebody going to be watching this, or they're married to somebody who's going to watch this, and the husband, the man in the relationship, has no interest in God. And he used to Terry however many years ago, like, I will go for this, but I'm not interested in this. What would you say to the man that says, I don't need God, I got everything figured out? What would you say to him?
Well, first of all, I would ask him, what is his understanding about God? Do you have an understanding? Is there any kind of perception in your mind or in your thoughts about God? Is there a reason for God?
Right.
Okay? Not just for a God, but is there a reason for God in your life? And if they say yes, then we have something to build with. If they say no, then most likely you're going to be starting way behind the eight ball.
Right.
And the goal is to lead that person to Christ and to allow their hearts to experience something that's beyond just their hardness and the harshness of the reality of life. And that's what Jesus does supernaturally, right? And so, if I'm talking, in the scenario, and I don't want to take too much of your time, but in the scenario, if I'm talking to somebody who has a perception and has an understanding of God, and that there is a desire in their heart for God,
Right.
then my goal would be to introduce God to them in their context.
Right. Okay.
Okay? And to bring God in their context in a way where things that you don't understand, or things that you need to understand, or things that can improve on your situation will come from God. And maybe there's just a little bit of fine tuning that needs to happen. And are you willing to do that?
Right.
Right? And if they say yes, then we can go together, because the scripture says that how can two walk together unless they agree? So there needs to be agreement on a principle.
Sure.
And that principle is a principle of value and substance that if we bring it into our life that's of God, then it can only be beneficial for us. There's nothing in God that isn't beneficial if we receive it the right way and we see it deployed in our lives in a way that honors Him and then honors everything else in our lives. And this is something that I learned after we got married, was that there was very little understanding of how to treat my wife.
Well, you didn't have a good example growing up.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of unlearning to do
Exactly.
so you could learn.
Exactly. But here's the point. Here's a point I want to raise. Even with that understanding, God was not a factor.
Right.
So there could have been a model, but if God is not the factor,
Whew. Glory.
then that model is skewed. The model will only go so far. But if God is a central factor to it, then it's a model that won't wear out. It won't run out.
Yeah.
Okay?
His love never runs out.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And so, there's that constant improvement program that is running inside of me that says, I can learn something new today in our 34 years of being married together.
Yeah.
I can learn something new about her, but also I can learn something new of how to honor her or treat her.
But Terry, how did you receive that? Like, I don't hear. I talk to lots of people, not many people, even solid Christians, men of God. We get to a place, and I think the older we get, a lot of times, the more we think, okay, you know what? I think I probably discovered everything. But to hear you talk, it seems like to me that Terry Wilson, the person of Terry Wilson, is always trying to find the next level, what God is doing next.
Yeah.
Where does that come from?
Oh, that's a really great question. You have an answer for that?
I think I don't want to make it sound like, we got married and then everything was just gravy after that.
Oh, we'll get into the ungravy parts so that we can make sure the audience understands.
Yeah, so that I can try to move towards answering that question.
For sure.
And I think that's, again, part of one of the things that people don't look at when they're considering marriage. Like, if you think that wedding day, everything that you saw as potential flaws in that person, that getting married is going to change that.
That's good.
You're sorely
You're
mistaken.
going to be disappointed.
And it will change it, but not for the better.
Right.
Because whatever showed up before,
Yes.
until it's dealt with, is just going to get, I won't say worse necessarily, but it's going to be magnified after you're married. And that's really what happened with us. I think, we were both, we were in our mid-20s, so fairly young still. Didn't have a clear path in life. We were new Christians. He didn't have a stable environment growing up that modeled marriage or fatherhood to him. My parents, after several decades of marriage, decided to go their separate ways. So when he and I got together, it was actually in the midst of that time that my parents were separating. So I didn't even feel like I had somebody that I could go to for advice. Yeah. Right? So our first year of marriage, the fact that we survived that was a miracle, because it was hell. It was hell on earth. It was awful. Absolutely awful. We fought.
You guys look like you're in pain, guys.
It was bad. It was bad. I mean, as
need counseling from that year.
as passionate as we were for each other and our new relationship with the Lord, we didn't have a clue what we were doing.
Oh man!
And
started a honeymoon. Oh,
yeah, and there was just there was no maturity that was there at all. And if you look at maturity being able to shoulder responsibility and being able to live sacrificially and selflessly, none of that was built in yet. It was things that we were learning. But I think the fact that we knew that it existed as a goal in the distance, that was sort of what began to speak to, okay, this is what it's like now, and this is awful. But with God's help and our own commitment to allowing him to do the work that he needs to do in us, then maybe we can get there. And to my husband's credit, and to this day, he's way quicker than I am to apologize.
Is he?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow,
like
that's
to
really
the
cool.
to the point that we're having a blow up argument. Like
Oh, you do that too? Wow.
not so much, not these days anymore. Not to that extent, but it used to be.
Right.
The shouting match, and then I'd be crying. He'd be fed up to the point that he didn't want to be around me in the house.
Sure.
So he'd take off in the car. I'd hear him peel out of the driveway. He'd say, "I'm going up the street," and I didn't know what that meant,
so
where he was
funny.
going.
Yeah, yeah.
And and this was before cell phones and all of this, but he would either call me or come back and say, the Holy Spirit spoke to me, and
Wow.
and it was never, and it never came from a place of like false humility or him feeling like he had to take all the responsibility.
Right.
It's just that he would do it first, and that was enough for me to simmer down a bit and realize, okay, he's we're not really out to get each other. We just need to figure out different communication skills and how to handle conflict and how not to be selfish and when you see somebody doing what you saw growing up in terms of shutting down or leaving, that triggers something on the inside of you of, oh, that's going to happen to me, right? So then the response is elevated to it. So there were a lot of dynamics that were going on. But to circle back to your question of why Terry, I think, is on that constant quest,
Pursuit.
I think it's because every time he pursues something, that God has been faithful to teach him and to show him things that he wants to learn, and he does have this sense of, I know that there's more to learn. I know, he said to me maybe a couple of months ago that God was doing something in his heart, that his heart was changing towards me again, and that he just wanted to know how to love me more and love me better. And I mean, that is like anybody, that's music to your ears,
of course, right?
And this is in a season of like everything's good, everything's fine. There's no outward conflict, but
correct.
There's other pressures that are happening in life, but and that to me was almost like God saying, I'm just going to continue to bless you in this, often in spite of ourselves.
Yeah.
What quality, Jennifer, did you see in Terry that made you fall in love with him? And what, as that quality changed to, or character, the character that he has that made you fall in love with him, and what character does he have, or characteristic does he have, that causes you to love him now? Did that change over the years?